What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Glory UGA podcast, the podcast made of, for, and by the most diehard Georgia fans on planet Earth. This episode, as always, is brought to you by our good friends at MyBookie. And if you are a diehard Georgia fan, you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to this channel right now so you get all of our content designed for you guys. Like, comment, that's a huge help, guys, and we appreciate each and every one of you for helping us out with that. But today, we're going to talk some hardcore Georgia football because, believe it or not, spring practice is essentially here, guys. It is now less than 1 week away. This week is Georgia spring break. It's great here in Athens because, hey, we love the college students. We love them, right? They help the town. But it's also great when there's no traffic. It's great when I can go to the gym and not have to wait 30 freaking minutes to get on a machine. That's great. But it's spring break for UGA. But when the Dogs return from spring break, on Tuesday, we will open spring drills, and every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, we will have practices leading up to G-Day in mid-April. So it's about to get real, guys, and we've been previewing spring practice. We've been running our spring practice primer episodes, previewing the position battles at a variety of positions. You can check those out on our channel. You can also check out even more of them on the audio side of things, wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, wherever. We've got a ton of stuff out there that you won't find here on this channel. We also talk Georgia baseball, basketball, all that, so you can check that stuff out. But we've been previewing spring practice. But guys, we don't have much time left. So we're going to have to accelerate this here today. And to do that, I'm going to bring back an old favorite from the summer, which is kind of when we kicked off this YouTube channel. We've got a lot of positive feedback on this format. So I figured why not here leading the spring practice? Let's go ahead and bring it back. I got a top 5 list for you here today. I'm very intrigued by this 2025 Georgia football team, because I do think there's more questions about this team. There's more uncertainties, more unknowns than we've seen in quite some time under Kirby Smart. So I'm fascinated to see how all this will play out at a variety of positions. So what I got today is I've got what I believe are the top 5 questions that the Georgia football team needs to answer during spring drills going into the 2025 season. Now, okay, caveat here. I know that this is just spring practice, and it's highly unlikely that any of these questions that I'm going to go through today are going to be definitively answered by the time we get to G-Day. But what I'm hoping is that we'll start to find answers, and that we'll have clues as to what these answers are going to be. And at least we don't go into don't go into the rest of the offseason, go into fall camp oh my God, what are we going to do at the jack linebacker position? Oh my God, what are we going to do at the 5-tech defensive end position? I hope we at least start to find some of those answers. So these are things that I'm going to be watching for, things that I want to see us make strides in answering. So I got a list here. I tried to put these in order of least to most important. So we'll start with number 5, and I'm looking at the wide receiver position, guys. I love what we've done in the transfer portal. I love what we've done in the high school recruiting ranks. I think you can make the argument, and I would make the argument, that this 2025 receiver recruiting class that we brought in is the best receiver class certainly in the Kirby Smart era, but maybe even in Georgia football history. We brought in some freaking studs. We ponied up when it came to NIL. We prioritized them because we knew it was a deficiency, right? And we've addressed that in a big way. But with all the transfers we brought in, whether it's Noah Thomas, Zachariah Branch going from USC playing the slot receiver position, the new guys, CJ Wiley, Talon Taylor, maybe some of the sophomores, Nitro Tuggle, you can throw Sokofi White as well. Out of all that group, okay, I think we have some guys that can play for us, certainly. I think that I'm very confident that we'll have a better group as a whole than what we had a year ago. But the question I still have about this Georgia wide receiver, and I'll throw the tight ends in here as well, wide receivers and tight ends. Does Georgia currently have an alpha on its roster at the wide receiver or tight end position? Does Georgia have an alpha playmaker in the pass game? Do we have that? We know we had one in Brock Bowers. And look, I'm not expecting anyone on the roster to be Brock Bowers or anything remotely close to that, because Brock's a unicorn, right? I'm not expecting that. But do we have a guy that can be that alpha, especially at the X receiver position? We haven't had one of those in a minute. I mean, you can say George Pickens was certainly the closest we've had to that, but do we have a guy like Jeremiah Smith or Ryan Williams? If you go tight ends, Tyler Warren, maybe at Penn State a year ago. Go back a year or so with LSU, Malik Neighbors. Do we have a guy like that to where when we need a play, it's crunch time, big down, big moment in the game. We need a play. We have a guy that we're just going to go to and he's going to deliver. Do we have a guy like that? Do we have a guy that is going to be so dominant that it forces defensive coordinators to game plan around him, to direct so much attention towards him that it opens up room and opportunities for other players on the team, the way that Brock Bowers did? Every single defensive coordinator who game planned for Georgia from 2021 to 2023, at the top of their priority list was stop Brock Bowers. Like, that's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Stop that guy, and then you got a chance, right? Easier said than done. But do we have a guy like that, right? Because it's a different era, and the way that football's evolved, like, I'm not saying you have to have a guy like that, but man, if you don't, it's gonna be an uphill battle trying to win a national title. Let's just make no mistake about it, guys. Every year, that's the standard for Georgia. We are going into a season with the expectation of trying to win a national title, right? And the way that we recruit, in the program that we have built, that's a realistic expectation. Maybe more so in some years than others, but every year it is the expectation. That's kind of where we are as a program, when those back-to-back national titles and win the SEC last year and coming within. I can't even go back to 2023. That's still a scar that has not healed yet. But do we have a guy like that, right? And I think that what I will say is that we have more options this year, more possibilities of someone who could be that guy. And I'm not trying to kill the guys we had last year. Look, I know that we dropped a ton of passes, more than any team in the country. We all know that. It's been well established. But let's be real. Arian Smith did some good things for us last year. Had a huge year in his final year. For him, the jump he made, fantastic. Dom Lovett was vastly underutilized in our system, but was productive doing what he was asked to do. Dylan Bell was productive for us. He's back this year. So he's also going to factor in, could he be that guy? I don't think Dylan Bell is going to be like an alpha receiver. I think he has a lot of versatility. I think we can use him in different ways. But you look at a guy like Noah Thomas coming from Texas A&M. And I know the production, the numbers from A&M don't scream alpha wide receiver. But you also have to think about the context of it was a revolving door of quarterbacks there at A&M for him, guys. There was a lot of instability there. They just couldn't really get that figured out. But if you watch the guy play, I mean, from a physical tool standpoint, size, speed, athleticism, catch radius, leaping ability, the guy's got it, man. I think he has the makings to become a legit alpha kind of guy. I felt the same way about Colby Young coming to last year. Coming out of Miami, the numbers weren't, they were solid. They weren't elite in 2022. But, if you go back to Miami in 2022, Tyler Van Dyke, or I should say 2023, Tyler Van Dyke was banged up for most of that year. When he was healthy, he wasn't any good. He wasn't the same guy he was a couple years prior to that as a freshman. So there's some context there. And I watched Colby Young play, and I'm like, all right, I see some things that you want to see out of like guys end up being like legit studs, like alpha guys at the wide receiver position. We know that Colby Young got banged up in fall camp, and that cost him some time early in the year. It kind of just cost him reps with Carson Beck and kind of building that rapport. And then we know what happened with the legal situation. But he should be back this year. I actually have him on a very good account. He's working out with the team right now, so I feel confident there. Zachariah Branch, I still think he's learning how to play that position, but in terms of just explosiveness, he has that kind of explosiveness. And if we can, I think, if you have a dude at the slot, it's really tough to handle those guys, man, because you can't get your hands on them off the ball because they're playing off the line of scrimmage, and they got usually have a two-way go there. So it's really, really tough to defend an elite slot wide receiver. I'm like, Ladd McConkey was that. Ladd played outside for us too, but you put Ladd in the slot, and you see what the Chargers do with him. It's hard to freaking stop, man. Zachariah Branch has that type of athleticism, but has he learned to play the position, the nuances, the route running, all those kind of things, setting up DBs, all that kind of stuff. And then you got the highly touted freshman, C.J. Wiley, coming out of Milton High School, tall, long, fast, athletic. Talon Taylor, the technician extraordinaire, that's also an incredible athlete. We have a number of options. Nitro Tuggle coming back. He was going to enter the transfer portal. We were able to get him back. He's not a burner, but he's got great twitch to his game. I think his best football still ahead of him. I like Sokovia White a lot in the slot. I think that guy is someone that is just a football player. I don't know if his time will be this year, but I do think we have more options this year to maybe step up and be that alpha for Georgia. But make no mistake about it. If we want to get back to winning national titles and not losing in our first playoff game, we need to find somebody like that. I'm not saying I got to be like Jeremiah Smith. He's kind of like Brock Bowers, unicorn stuff. But can we have someone that is a legit threat to defenses where they have to game plan around you? We didn't really have that last year. We had some good players at tight end and receiver, but did we have a guy like that? I don't know. I don't think we did. So I'm curious to see if somebody starts to emerge and you start hearing buzz about, okay, that guy, he's different. Maybe Lawson Lucky takes a step this year. Maybe a guy like Ethan Barbour steps up coming out of Milton High School as a tight end. I think that guy's just a freaking football player, kind of like Scovie White. Dude just makes plays. So do we have a guy like that? Again, will we find a definitive answer to that question this spring? Probably not. But I think we can start to find clues to it and start to hear some buzz there. So that's number 5 on my list of Georgia's top 5 biggest questions coming into spring practice. Number 4, I really went back and forth on this one. I had a little higher, then I moved it back, then moved it higher, moved it back again. But I settled on having it at number 4, and that's the quarterback position. Does Georgia have more than and I usually hate this term, but I'll throw it out there. Does Georgia have more than a quote-unquote game manager? Does Georgia have someone at the quarterback position that can actually elevate this team? That's the question I have. Now, the reason I did not have this higher on my list is because I do think I saw enough from Gunnar Stockton, who I do think is the odds-on favorite to win the job. If you want more on the quarterback battle between him and Ryan Puglisi, who I think is the only other option on the roster right now that has a legit chance to compete for the job. We did a video breaking down that entire quarterback battle, so make sure to go back and check that out if you haven't already. I think you guys will enjoy that. But I saw enough from Gunnar towards the end of last year, like when he played last year, to encourage me and lead me to believe that our offense, if Gunnar does end up winning the job, again, do think he's the leader in the clubhouse, that he has a high floor as our quarterback. My question remains, though, what is our ceiling with Gunnar Stockton? What is his ceiling as a quarterback? Is he a guy that can actually go out and put a team on his back and go win you football games, go win you a national championship? Can he elevate the players around him? Can he elevate the offense? Can he be more than a game manager? Those are things I want to see, right? And I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful the answer is yes. Look, and I know we have some massive Gunnar Stockton fans out there. I know he's got his stands. And I know because you let me know about it. Anytime I talk about the guy, look, I love Gunnar like you guys do. I want good things to happen for him. I want him to be great. The guy's just been nothing short of a fantastic teammate, man. But I think it's also fair to question, like, what is his ceiling? What is the offense's ceiling with him? Because I've always been of the mind that to win a national title, you got to have a guy at quarterback, right? You either have one or you don't. If you don't have one, you're going to have a really hard time. It's going to be an uphill battle for you to win a national title. Now, I will say Ohio State kind of turned that premise on its head with Will Howard, because Will Howard was fine, right? But they had so much talent around him with Jeremiah Smith and Igbuka. I mean, and you got Quinshad Judkins. You got all these dudes, Travion Henderson, all these guys around him that, like, yeah, you could get away with having a game manager, a guy that could just kind of distribute the football. But go back to my first question: does Georgia have even one guy like that? Do we? I mean, we don't. I will find out. I mean, I like Nate Frazier, running back, but do we have the quantity of playmakers out wide and offensively the skill positions that Ohio State did last year to kind of compensate for maybe not having an elite guy at quarterback? I think that's the big question. So, do we have a guy that can elevate the talent around him, as opposed to a guy that has to be elevated by the other guys around him, right? Does that make sense? So that's my question. And I think Puglisi, I love Puglisi's tools, man. I know that some people disagree with me. All Gunners fans out there, love you guys. Gunner's a great player. I know his high school pedigree. I know he's got a good arm. I know he's got good athleticism. All that stuff. Gunner's good, man. Again, I like the guy. But I will stand by my assessment that Puglisi has better physical tools. Yes, Gunnar has a strong arm. I know people come at me for this. I'm not saying he doesn't. Like, he's got a good arm. Yes, it's not a noodle arm. He's got a good arm. But I think Puglisi's got a little bit more of a live arm. Gunnar's a good athlete. I think Puglisi's a little bit of a better athlete. Gunnar's got fine. His size is fine. But I know clearly from a measurable standpoint, Puglisi has a little bit better size. So it's just for Puglisi, it's a matter of, can he get up to speed? Okay, two things is what I think he has to do. Number one, he has to prove to the coaches that his ceiling, and by extension, the ceiling of the offense with him at quarterback, is significantly higher, like clearly higher than what it would be with Gunnar Stockton. And then number two, that's great. Like, your high points are great. Like, showing us what you can do in spots, but can you do that consistently? Can we trust you? Can we trust you to not turn the ball over? Can we trust you to not take unnecessary risks? Can we trust you to protect the football and to take sacks when you've got to, right? Carson Beck didn't always do that last year. Those are the kind of things that a young quarterback coming into his redshirt freshman year, like, you got to prove that to the coaches. That's where Gunnar has the edge. I mean, Gunnar, like, awareness in the pocket, he's got to work on that some. I think hopefully that will come with more reps. But I do think that Puglisi is going to have a legit shot to win this job. Gunnar's the clear favorite. He's a clear favorite. I'm not suggesting otherwise, but I do think the competition is going to be a legit competition, and Kirby will give him a chance to win the job. But It's going to be an uphill battle for publicity, but whoever wins that job, can they elevate this team? Can they elevate the offense and play at anything approaching an elite level? Because I do think, like, I'm not saying you can't win a national title, which is always our goal at this point with Kirby. I'm not saying you can't win a national title without an elite quarterback, but it's a lot harder, right? And you got to be like awesome everywhere else around the quarterback. And I still have questions about, I think we're good around the quarterback, but are we awesome, elite at every position around the quarterback? And I think that remains to be seen. So quarterback, certainly a question for me there. Those are two spots we're going to start with on the offense side of the ball. Let's go to the other side of the ball. Let's talk some defense here. All right, so we have very little experience at the edge position, jack linebacker position. Very little experience. We lose our top 3 pass rushers from a year ago. They all 3 at varying times played edge for us, played jack linebacker situationally. We had Chaz Chambliss, who was a jack linebacker when he was on the field. He had 6.5 sacks, tied for the lead with Jalen Walker, who was versatile, played some inside linebacker, played some jack for us on pass rushing down situationally. Buckus Award winner, hard to replace that, right? And then Mike Williams played some 5-tech, played some jack. Those 3 guys combined for 18 sacks a year ago. They're all 3 gone. And the guy that we kind of had penciled in to be the heir apparent at jack, Damon Wilson Jr., late in this most recent transfer portal window, he decides he's going to exit stage left, go to the portal. So we're left with like, what? Like, we don't have bodies, man. We don't have a ton of bodies there. A position that was very deep last year, all of a sudden we're looking around like, can we find anyone to play this position? There's some questions there. And I am a big believer, guys, in the value of a pass rush. All you have to do is go back and think about the Super Bowl, guys. You watched it. I know you watched it, right? We all know how great Patrick Mahomes is, right? Maybe, one of the, some people would argue the greatest quarterback in NFL history. I'm not an NFL guy. I watch it casually. I don't watch enough to tell you if he's the greatest. He's just freaking awesome, right? Multiple Super Bowl winner. We know that. But how do the Eagles beat the Chiefs? How do they dethrone the Chiefs? How do they prevent the three-peat? They got after Patrick Mahomes. They harassed him. They lived in the backfield. They couldn't block him, man. The pass rush just completely devastated this traditionally dynamic Kansas City offense. They couldn't do anything. Patrick Mahomes couldn't even drop back and throw the football. That is the kryptonite for an elite passing game and an elite quarterback. You neutralize them with elite pass rushers. We had, I don't know if it was an elite pass rush, but a very good, one of the best pass rushers we've had in the Kirby Smart era, with the exception of like 2021. Those are probably the 2 best, right? 2021 and 2024. We're losing all those guys. And you're looking around, you're like, well, who's going to replace them? To me, it's going to be Gabe Harris, right? I think he plays some 5-tech for us. Let's not forget that he came in as a jack linebacker. He came in that class with Damon Wilson Jr., but we're so loaded at jack, and you see the talent that Gabe Harris has. He can bulk up a little bit. He can play some 5-tech 4 situation, which he did. I think he did a good job when he got opportunities. But I've always felt that he's still more of a true jack linebacker. So he, to me, is going to be the guy. But unfortunately, Gabe Harris is not going to really factor much in the equation this spring because he's one of about 338 freaking players in our team. They're going to miss spring practice, or most of spring practice, because they're recovering from offseason labrum surgeries. I've never seen a team that's had as many labrum injuries as Georgia has in the past couple years. And this year, it's at a high watermark. It's insane. Like, do other teams deal with labrum injuries the way that we do? It's out of control, man. I can't really understand. Can't wrap my mind around it. But he's not going to be doing much, if anything at all, from a contact standpoint this spring. So who else you got? Well, you got Quintavious Johnson, who's a guy that was a freshman last year, was kind of an under-recruited guy and wasn't like a big-time, high-profile recruit in the 2024 class. But this dude was making a name for himself in fall camp last year, to the point that I thought that he might actually get some legit snaps last year, even though we were loaded at the edge position. Ultimately, it didn't play out that way, but I know that our coaches are very high on him. I had that on very good authority. He's long, he's athletic, and if Gabe Harris is not getting if he's not getting reps coming off the labrum surgery during the spring, I think Quintavious Johnson would probably be the guy that I'd say right now is going to open as that guy for us with the number 1 defense in spring practice, and probably will leave spring practice as that guy, the number 1 guy, waiting on Gabe Harris to get back on the field. But there's a couple other guys there. Chris Cole, I think it's the guy that we can use all like Jalen Walker situationally on third downs as a pass rusher. He's much more of a true inside linebacker, but I do think he has pass rushing ability. We did that with him at times last year. He had a little bit of a role in the middle of the year when we were dealing with some injuries. So I would look for him to be situation one of those options. We have some freshmen that I think could factor in there. Isaiah Gibson, as a 5-star edge rusher coming out of high school. I think he's more of like a 5-tech body. He's like 260 pounds already. I think he probably grows into a 5-tech, but can he play the Michael Williams role, be another guy that situationally could play some outside linebacker for us? I think, yeah. I think absolutely. So there's some names to look at there, but like, we just don't have a lot of depth. I think we're probably going to dip into the transfer portal at that position if we can find a guy in the spring portal window. But, man, like, can we find any bodies, first off? And beyond bodies, though, like, bodies aren't good enough. Like, we have to have elite pass rushers. Do we have someone that can even come close to replacing the production that we got from those guys that are departing from last year's team? Can that be Gabe Harris? We won't see it this spring. Can it be Quintavious Johnson? Can he take another step in his development? I think he's going to need to. We need that. So I'm very curious to see what we do at edge, how creative we get there, who ends up playing there, because we're going to need to find some answers as pass rushers coming off the edge this year. Sticking on the defensive side of the ball, I thought about putting this at number 1 because I am still a very big believer in the idea that even though football's evolved and, you got to have elite skill, talent, elite quarterback play, all of that, right? Of course you do. I still believe in this league, in the SEC especially, it's a line of scrimmage league, man. And if you aren't good enough on the lines of scrimmage, you aren't going to win. You're not going to win national titles. I mean, Ole Miss, you can look at them. Like, what did they do in the transfer portal last year? They went and got a bunch of guys, but more than anything, they beefed up 2 things. Defensive line, offensive line. They had one of the best defensive lines in the country last year. I know they didn't make the playoff. I think Ole Miss playoff caliber, but they just lost 2 games to Kentucky and Florida they shouldn't have lost. And that's on them. That's on them. That's a story for another day. But they had one of the best defensive lines in the country. Y'all saw the issues they gave us. We lost the game because we couldn't block them. It was kind of like the Super Bowl. Like, they were the Eagles and we were the Chiefs. We could not block them. And that is why we lost that game in Oxford. I mean, I was there. Some of y'all are probably there. It was disgusting. It was awful. So I still believe that you win and lose games in this league on the lines of scrimmage. And guys, we're losing a ton of veteran production off that defensive line. And I'm gonna throw interior and the 5-tech in there as well. We're losing our top 3 defensive linemen by snap count from last year. We're losing TID, who played 51% of our snaps. And we know how good that guy was. That dude just blew up at the NFL Combine. And we lost that guy. He played over 50% of our snaps last year. Nas Stackhouse, 3-year starter in the aftermath of Jordan Davis. 48% of our snaps a year ago. Warren Brinson was banged up the first half of last year, but when he came back, he played a ton of snaps for us. Certainly when Christian Miller went down to injury late in the year, played 35% of our snaps. We return only 1 defensive lineman this year. Only one. One defensive lineman that played more than 13% of our defensive snaps last year. That's Christian Miller. Xavier McLeod was banged up early last year, came back and got more playing time as the season went on. I love Xavier McLeod. I think Xavier McLeod is going to be freaking awesome. And I throw him in here with this question, but my question about the defensive line is, do we have guys that can step up and be difference makers for us on the defensive line? Because that's what we need, guys. Like, if we are lacking bodies on the edge, like at Jack linebacker, we need to compensate for that on the interior, at the 3-tech, the 0-tech, and at the 5-tech. And we need to find multiple players that can play winning football for us there. And I would love to find like a legit difference maker. Can somebody emerge and be a difference maker for us on the defensive line? I don't think we had that last year. I think we had some really, really good players. I think Nas was really good. Warren was really good. TID was really good for us. He was dominant at times. But can we find out? I'm not saying we're going to have a Jalen Carter, right? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying we're going to have a Jordan Davis. But can we find somebody that can come closer to that than what we've had in recent years? I really like Christian Miller. I think he's got that potential. I think he's more of like a one gap, like he's a penetrating type guy. He's played some 0-tech for us. That's how he got on the field as a redshirt freshman. I think he's more of a true 3-tech. But he's another guy that's dealing with an offseason labrum injury, and he's not gonna be playing, man. He's not gonna be doing much at all, if anything, during spring drills. So that sucks, because I would like to see him take that next step, which I think he's capable of. But what it does do, silver lining here, is it opens up reps for some of the other guys, some of the younger players who we're going to need to accelerate their development. We need these guys to accelerate their growth and their development. Guys like Xavier McLeod, who's still a young player, man. Still a really young player. His best football still very much ahead of him. I think Xavier McLeod can be that guy. I think he's got difference-making potential. I think he, as a pass rusher, as an interior pass rusher, and also against the run. I saw some really good things from him, guys. He was a redshirt freshman last year, guys. His best football still very much ahead of him, and I think he's getting a ton of reps for us I would love to see him take that step. Jordan Hall is another guy. He might be the guy to think about here because let's not forget, Jordan Hall coming out of high school a couple years ago was a big-time 5-star recruit, right? He was a big-time 5-star recruit, like one of the next great Georgia defensive linemen. And you were hoping that he was going to have a breakout sophomore year. I know he was certainly hoping that. But he has a stress fracture in one leg at the start of fall camp, comes back from that, and then he has a stress fracture in the other leg. And so he ends up playing, I think, about 23 total snaps last year. It just was a non-factor because he was just banged up. So I know that he has a sour taste in his mouth, and he's eager to get back out there and make up for last year. And it's kind of a money year for Jordan. I mean, this is year 3. He could go pro after this year. It's time for him to start living up to the hype and the expectation. I know injury is what got him last year, but I think he's got a ton of ability. He's also got some versatility. It would not shock me, and I think right now I'd probably project him to open the spring as our starter at zero tech. But he could also play some 3 tech. It's where he played primarily as a freshman, played some 0 tech when he did play last year. But at 320, he's got some versatility there. I would love to see him take a massive step this spring. Again, we've got more time, got the rest of the offseason, we got fall camp. But it's time for Jordan Hall to step up and assert himself. And I'm hopeful we start to see that this spring. And you got some of the younger guys who are going to get a lot of reps too, certainly with Christian Miller not playing at the 3 tech. I think Nazir Johnson, Nnamdi Ogboko are 2 guys to watch at 0 tech behind Jordan Hall. Those guys are more true 0 tech bodies at roughly 340 pounds each. Jordan Thomas is a guy that has a lot of potential at the 3 tech. He'll get some enhanced reps. And then the 5 tech, man, we don't have a ton of bodies, especially if we move Gabe Harris over to Jack linebacker. So I think ideally, what we're hoping for is Joseph Jonah-Ajonye as a sophomore is ready to take that step. So he played a good bit for us early last year. We had so many injuries on the defensive line, but he broke his foot and missed the rest of the year after the first couple of games. And he's still been kind of coming back from the injury early in the offseason. But from my understanding, at some point, it looks like at some point during spring drills, he will be cleared for contact. How much, I don't know, it remains to be seen, but I would like to see him, if he's able to get out there and do some things from a contact standpoint, to start to take that next step. Because he's got the length, the athleticism to be a big-time 5 tech for us against the run, rushing the passer as well. I would love to see him take that step. Justin Green, a Georgia kid, be another guy that I would like to see take a step at the 5 tech. So I need to see it, guys. I need to see some of these guys step up and prove they can play winning football for us on the defensive line. Because we're losing a ton of production. Christian Miller's not going to be doing much at all this spring, and we need guys to step up, accelerate their development. And I need to see it, man, because I still very much believe that you win and lose games in this league on the lines of scrimmage. And finally, speaking of the lines of scrimmage, let's talk about the offensive tackle position, guys. It was bad last year, man. I mean, you've heard me say the numbers before. I'll say them again if you've got some newer listeners. Guys, we gave up 25 sacks last year. 25. You might be saying, well, that's not terrible. It ain't good, guys, especially relative to 2023. We gave up 13 sacks. Not a math guy. I can do that math. That's almost twice as many sacks that we gave up in 2025 that we gave up in 2023. Or 2024 as we gave up in 2023. All right? Almost double the sacks from 2023. That's not getting it done. We were also 15th out of 16 teams in the league in rushing offense. We averaged 60 yards less than the next lowest season output for a Georgia football team under Kirby Smart, which is 2019, which was a tragic offensive year. It wasn't good enough. And it's not all in the offensive line. There's plenty of blame to share. Coaches, quarterbacks, receivers, running backs too. There's some culpability there. But the lion's share of this is on the offensive line. There was injuries, there was context. Certainly we were banged up, no doubt. But we've got to be better, man. We've got to be better on the offensive line, specifically at the offensive tackle position. I thought we were solid on the interior last year. We were banged up, but I thought for the most part we were good. Certainly when we were healthy, I thought we were very good on the interior. The edges, we had problems all year long, man. All year long. Xavier Truss was always more of a guard. He did an admirable job. He did his best over there at right tackle. Left tackle was a problem, man. Ernest Green did not build off the 2023 campaign. In no way, shape, or form. He was banged up. To his defense, he was banged up. He got out of shape, got heavy. His feet were stuck in concrete as a result, and it was a bad look, man. And eventually gets benched. We put Monroe Freeling over there. Monroe Freeling, unfortunately, yet another guy on the incredibly long list of dudes with a labrum injury that had offseason surgery and will not be practicing this spring. So that sucks because that's a guy that we need him to get as many reps as possible because I still very much believe in Monroe Freeling. He was a big-time high school recruit. I loved his frame, his athleticism coming out of high school. He just needed to get bigger, stronger, and he did. He's done that. And the last year he was banged up. I thought he did some good things prior to really suffering their injury. I thought he did a really good job against Clemson week 1. But we all have that bad taste in our mouth of how it ended. I still I can't get this out of my mind. It was right there in front of me in the Superdome, the Sugar Bowl. The sack fumble right before halftime. Monroe just got whipped. And look, the injury, I mean, I know. I don't want to kill the guy. He was banged up. And kudos to him for going out there and gutting it out when he's injured like that. Certainly a heck of an effort there. But it just wasn't good enough, man. It simply wasn't. And you go yeah, I know Carson Beck threw a ton of interceptions last year. And a lot of those were on him. But I go back to the Florida game especially. Those 3 interceptions he threw in that game, yeah, he's got to make better decisions and eat the football, take the sack. Don't put the ball in harm's way. Yeah, that's on Carson. But all 3 of those interceptions, if you go back and watch the tape, I did a video on this. They were a direct function of pressure in his face. We just weren't protecting him. It's that simple. And with whoever wins the quarterback job is going to be very inexperienced. Now, they have more athleticism than the Cards. They can create more outside the pocket. Certainly, that's true. But they're going to be inexperienced. They're not going to have – you saw Gunner last year, certainly in the Sugar Bowl, the awareness wasn't all there. Hopefully, that improves as they get more reps. But we need to protect that quarterback. We need to give them a clean pocket. We do. We need to give him a clean pocket. And we just didn't do that enough for Carson last year. And that's a problem. It's kind of like the quarterback position. You have to have a quarterback, I think, to win at a high level. You've got to have tackles to win at a high level. If you don't, you're just not going to win a national title. I believe that, guys. The offense, it's still very much a line of scrimmage league. And I think we're finally interior. I feel strongly in saying that right now. I don't think there's much intrigue on the interior of the offensive line. I think it's going to be Drew Bobo at center. One of the guards will be Micah Morris, probably the left guard if I had to guess right now, and the other guard will probably be Daniel Calhoun would be my guess there. I feel pretty good about that grouping, but the edges I think is still up for debate. So do we have somebody that can actually step up and protect the quarterback and play at a high level at the offensive tackle position and give us improved play from what we saw a year ago? Again, it won't be Monroe Freeling this spring because he's not going to be playing. He's dealing with the labrum injury. Can Ernest Green have a bounce back year? Because let's not forget, he was a top 50 national recruit. I think he's more of a guard. I think he's really a guard that we're playing him at tackle. So I don't think we're doing him any favors there. He's certainly not a left tackle, but can he get his body back in shape, drop weight, improve his foot speed, and come closer to reaching those expectations he had coming out of high school at hopefully right tackle, not left tackle? Can one of the young guys, who I think are supremely talented, but just really young and experienced and still kind of developing, like Jazar Jackson, the guy who's playing semi-pro basketball, was a late addition to the 2024 recruiting class, 6'10", 360 pounds, physical tools for days, man, but just he didn't play football for 4 years. Learning the nuances of the position, has he taken enough steps to where he can legitimately push for a spot? Because if he's ready, if he's learned how to play the position physically, he's got a difference-making type body. It's just, has he learned how to play the position? Has he developed enough? And I think those are things that we'll start to find some answers to this spring. Bo Hughley, can he be a guy, another highly recruited guy coming out of high school, can he be a guy that can step up and maybe give us something at tackle and maybe make a push for one of those jobs? But whoever it is, guys, we need to find answers. Juan Gaston, a guy coming in, it was a 5-star guy on some of the recruiting services late in the cycle, had a big all-star season and bumped himself up on some of these recruiting services to a 5-star, certainly our highest rated offensive lineman in this class. Can he be one of those freshmen who comes in and immediately plays right away? I mean, I always hesitate to put those kind of expectations on any freshman, but certainly guys in the trenches, because you're going against grown men. But we've seen with Andrew Thomas, and you see with Isaiah Wilson to a degree. Can he be one of those guys? And go back to the defensive line, a guy I forgot to mention, Elijah Griffin, number 1 defensive lineman in the country. Go back to the defensive line. Can he step up and give us something? Can he be a difference maker right away? I don't think we should be in the position of expecting that, but these guys are highly talented, and they'll have some opportunities. What can they give us? So I'm curious, man, and I think it's a question we have to answer. Can we find winning players at the offensive tackle position? Because that was maybe the biggest issue for the entire team last year. Maybe. We had a variety of issues. Receivers, certainly. Quarterback play at times. But I think a lot of the quarterback issues were certainly, you can trace them back to not having somebody protecting you in the pocket and giving you a clean pocket as much as Carson needed that. So I am very intrigued on who could step up. I think that's a huge question that we have to begin to answer this spring. But all right, guys, that's all I got for you here today. Again, those are my 5 biggest questions for this Georgia football team heading into spring practice. Again, we're not going to find any definitive answers. Probably not. Highly unlikely. But hopefully we can start to find some answers and feel better about these questions coming out of spring practice. But yeah, we'll have you guys covered. So keep coming back here, guys, all spring long. We're going to have you covered with a ton of spring practice coverage, but we cover more than just football, guys. Obviously, Georgia football is near and dear to our heart. That's number one for us. That's what we're most passionate about. But on the audio side of things, we also cover Georgia baseball, Georgia basketball, which huge win for the Dogs last night. Unbelievable. I'm a long-suffering Georgia basketball fan, and man, we're in the tournament, right? I feel confident saying that. It's just a matter of seeding now. So we cover Georgia basketball, all sorts of Georgia stuff. So make sure to find us on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. But also, if you come back here for some exclusive YouTube content as well. And again, if you're a diehard Georgia fan and enjoy this kind of content, go ahead, do yourself a favor, subscribe to this channel right now, like, comment. Sincerely appreciate each and every one of you for checking this out today. Any help that you guys can give us is sincerely appreciated. But thank you guys. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs!